Thank you, Jen. I misheard Jen, and I turned to these three and I said, did one of you just go public? I didn't hear the whole context. Anyway, welcome. We spend so much time here talking with some of the biggest companies in the world. And this is always a really fun moment. And I just personally love talking to entrepreneurs. And congratulations to all of you. It's really exciting what each of you is doing. What's great about this panel is that each of these three women is at a slightly different stage in their business. And we're going to talk about scaling. And I think they each have probably very different perspectives. So Debbie Sterling founded Goldie Blocks 2 years ago as a toy company that would sort of disrupt the pink aisle, was her motto, as a way to get women into construction and engineering toys and therefore careers. Susan Coelius Keplinger, right? I've got it down now. Founded Trigit, which is an ad tech company that does things like real-time bidding. And I think you're the reason why sometimes when I look at a Diane von Furstenberg dress, it follows me around.
That is what we do.
For the next couple weeks. But Susan founded Trigit 8 years ago, 52 employees, and going great guns. And then Shunee Yee founded Csoft, her company, which is the localization software communications company, in 2003. Was it 2003?
Yes.
And it's now got revenues of $30 million, 15 offices around the world, and 300 and some employees.
450.
450, oh
wow.
my gosh. So very, very different stages. And Shunee, why don't I start with you, since you have kind of experienced so much. Your business is at a different stage. What do you wish you knew as you were scaling your business that you know now?
Wow. Oh, first of all, thank you so much, Lee. 2 years ago, I was here being named as one of the top 10 Fortune most powerful women entrepreneurs. And it's a great honor to be back here again to help celebrating this year's new top 10 entrepreneurs. And so what I wish to know, I guess scaling business is probably the #1 topic and challenge for any company in a growth stage. And it's sort of like once you pass the adolescent stage in life, so growth is not all about just growing taller or bigger. It's more about redefining your space, shaping out the view and strategy to the world, and developing a community to be ready for making a bigger impact in the market. So 11 years ago, when my team and I started the business by helping multinational company translating their product for international market, we localized hundreds of different products, millions of words around the world each day. But our business never just about translation. So today, we probably serving more than 50% of world top brand, not just for leading American, European company, but also for a lot of China companies getting ready to go global, and really helping them to engage the world market, addressing the culture and language issues in their cross-border MAs. So that's the going global in a new direction, east to west, really set for the future. So I see scaling business for my company needs 3 things. One, a definite vision for the future that doesn't exist, all in, all nothing kind of determination and devotion. And really need a capacity, then you are able to accept disappointment and failure.
So what was your biggest disappointment or what was your worst moment along the way?
Well, let me start at maybe the toughest things in doing the growth. It's really to define a focus that everyone in the organization aligned behind and stay focused. I guess the easiest part is to get distracted. And my worst moment, as you know, we're translation and localization companies. So we're dealing with more than 100 different languages. And when the crisis is coming all at the same time, because the time to market is so critical, and you get Japanese reviewer talking about you need to make some changes at last minute, and you're talking the French linguist saying, no, that's trans creation, doesn't really work for the French market. And your server probably crashed the day, you have to restart one of the backup system. It just happened all at the same time. That could be one of the worst days.
Yeah.
But there are also a lot of good days. And that, so you really have to stay kind of positive.
Yeah.
And believe there's always good days to come.
Good lesson, good advice. Susan, I was talking with Susan last night. I said, I think I'm going to ask you about this. You said, no, this is a much better question. And we were talking about hiring and how that can be such a challenge, especially in the very early days. You need to rally your troops. You need, even if you only have 5 employees, you need them to be so committed and so engaged and so on board for the ride. And that can often be hard to ask people to take a risk to join you. And hiring becomes more critical the bigger you get, because then at a certain point you need to have a seasoned leader, a couple of them. And so talk about that a little bit.
So I actually did some research as well, because we talked about it.
All
so
right.
It's interesting. I think when you're really early on at a company, we were really poor, right? We didn't have any money. And so you hire the best people you can possibly find that you can afford. And so we would put out recs for jobs, and we'd source people, and we were trying to find whoever we can. For every 10 resumes I got, 9 of them were from men, and 1 was from a female. And I was devoted. I said, I'm going to create a company that is very diverse, that has just as many women as there are men. And that did not happen. And when I went back and I looked at Google, and I looked at Facebook, and I looked at Apple, and I looked at Uber, and I looked at Airbnb. And out of those founding teams, out of those 10, 20 employees, you see the same phenomena happening. And what happens is those early employees, that foundation of your company, when it is not diverse, your company starts to grow in a way that's not diverse. And it was a huge problem for us. We had 10 employees, 9 of them, I guess it was 8 of them were men, 2 of us were women. But it was like, whoa, this is not the direction of how we want to scale our organization and scale our company. And it really has ramifications, and it's had ramifications for us. Our VP of product was very early, and he grew very quickly within the company because he got there very early. Our director of revenue started out straight out of college, and he is just a rock star. And I really think one of the big challenges that I found, and something I want to change when I do this again, is how you think about that very early scaling so that you have a very diverse workplace, so that as the company grows, that diversity creates the foundation. And that's something we didn't do, and now we've had to kind of go back and figure out, okay, how do we make sure we have women in leadership positions? How do we make sure we have a very multicultural sort of environment? Because I do think it has had pretty profound implications for how we, as a culture, have grown. And it's one of our big challenges. And when I think scaling a company, it was one of the things that I didn't realize was happening. And then I looked back and was like, whoa, that just happened.
So how do you think you can address that, though?
Well, starting again, I'd look at it very differently.
Really consciously.
Yeah, and I think, when you go back, when you're a young entrepreneur, you're just growing so quickly and trying to, like I said, hire the best people that you can as quickly as you can. And you don't always have a lot of choices. When you find a great candidate, you're going to hire that great candidate regardless of their gender or their race or their ethnicity, et cetera. But I really think as we've grown, I asked Marissa Meyer this after I'd kind of realized we had a problem, and she said it's really a linear problem. The more resumes you can look at, right, the more qualified applicants you're going to get. And so you just have to really devote yourself, if that's a priority for you, and I think it should be a priority for any leader, you really have to devote yourself to that linear approach of looking at more resumes, finding more people. But I just didn't even understand it was a problem until, because at the early stages, you're just growing so quickly, and the last thing you're thinking about is, I need to create a diverse workplace, but yet the foundation is what you create early on. And I think that foundation was, we had to go back and really focus on rebuilding that.
Mm-hmm. Debbie, tell us a little bit about getting Goldie Blocks off the ground. What was your biggest challenge in the very early days 2 years ago?
Well, I think at the very beginning when I came up with the idea to create a construction toy that would appeal to girls and get them excited about engineering and tech, I thought it was the most obvious idea ever. And that it was one of those, why doesn't this exist? But when I brought it to the New York Toy Fair and kind of started showing it to toy industry people and showing it to toy store owners, they all kind of crinkled their nose and looked at me and kind of whispered that this won't sell, and there's no market for it. And look at the pink aisle. This is what's popular. This is what girls like. You can't fight nature. So I think my biggest challenge at the very beginning was the conventional wisdom of this industry that I was entering, which is a very male-dominated industry, by the way, that there was no market viability for my concept.
I would love to see, by the way, Megyn Kelly go at it with the person who said it's just not their nature. You also did something really interesting, which is that you assembled a panel of some of the leading veterans in the toy industry to ask them for advice. People like the founders of Cranium and Pictionary and Leapfrog and Buzzy something I didn't even hear of. Build-A-Bear, yes, Maxine Clark, who we know very well, and some others, and Klutz, all these things. Anyway, how did you manage to do that? And also, weren't you worried that one of them was going to steal your idea?
Well, it's funny because when I first started out, I was so obsessed with this idea of Goldie Blocks. I kind of dropped everything, quit my job, and holed up in my apartment like a hermit, reading every article I could and building prototypes. And I was actually afraid to talk about it with people because I didn't want my ideas to get stolen. And I had this NDA that I would even like I made my mom sign an NDA. So I was so afraid. And when I was this hermit, it was really lonely and kind of depressing, to be honest. Even though I was doing my passion and what I loved, it was lonely. And I finally, at the urging of a friend of mine, went to this social entrepreneurship conference. And in the conference, they taught us about if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you really need to put yourself out there as much as you can and find the mentors that you want to follow in their footsteps and just relentlessly stalk them until they're willing to talk to you. And that was a huge mental shift for me. I realized I'd been holding up and I wasn't doing this idea justice. I wouldn't be able to do it by myself. And immediately one of the people who I identified that would be a great mentor to me is the woman named Jennifer Siebel-Newsome, who is the creator of the documentary film Misrepresentation. And I was really inspired by that film because I wanted to create a character that was going to kind of go against those conventional stereotypes of what a little girl can do. And I had no connection to her whatsoever, no mutual friends, no anything. But I saw that she was screening her film somewhat nearby and was doing a Q&A. And so I convinced two of the friends who I met at this conference to go with me to go to the film screening with the hopes that I might be able to talk to her. And we drove 2 hours to get there. When the film screening happened, it's like 11 p.m. We hadn't eaten, my stomach's growling, and I'm like, all right, guys, let's just go home. And they're like, oh no, you're going up there and you're gonna talk to her. And they shoved me onto the stage. I cut a line of maybe 50 people trying to talk to her, went up to the front and introduced myself, and I was just so excited. She said, let's get coffee, here's my card. And sure enough, I met with her, and that was the beginning of this journey where I started to just do that over and over and over again, and that's how I've now built these great advisors, and it's been incredibly helpful to me because I think for me what I'm doing is really different, and I am trying to innovate and not rely on these old stereotypes, and so getting this kind of broad input from all of these different people has helped me a lot rather than just kind of one advisor, just a handful.
Susan, who did you go to? Do you have a mentor?
I did have a mentor. Joy Covey was my mentor.
Right.
And for those that don't know her.
Who in the room knew Joy Covey? Yeah.
So Joy was a prolific, she was the CFO of Amazon. Yeah, and the thing that was amazing about Joy, other than the fact that she was an extreme athlete, which, like me, and there's not very many of us weirdos out there, but Joy could think strategically better than probably anyone I've ever met. And so our advising would be, okay, Susan, we're gonna go kite surfing. And we would talk for 5 minutes about my company, an hour about her son, and an hour about kite surfing, and that would be it. And she would give me all the advice that I ever needed. And so to find somebody like that, and she said to me, the best advice she ever gave me is she said, Susan, mentorship is not about finding people who you think have done all these amazing things in their life. Mentorship is about finding friends. And the wonderful thing about Joy was here was this friend that had made quite a bit of money, who loved the same things I did, who seemed to like to hang out with me, who gave me the best advice in the world. And that was the best advice on how to find a mentor that I've ever had. And it was really, what a lovely woman. And, you know, we miss her very much.
For those of you who don't know, Joy passed away a few years ago.
About 1 year ago.
1 year ago, just 1 year ago, in a biking accident. Do you think of her? Do you have her voice in your head?
Oh, every day.
Yeah.
I mean, what a legend.
Yeah, wow. Shunee, did you have a mentor along your way?
Well, thinking by my early days starting the business in the 2-bedroom apartment right in the downtown Soho, Beijing. And I really have to say, maybe in a different way, my boy was born the same year was really the inspiration to try to get things going. So if I look back, continuing what things that really inspire me, I think really my team, a dozen of them who started early with me still in the company. And at the early stage, what we don't lack of is the passion. As we grow to this stage, we have more than 15 offices around the world, and we executed more than 10,000 projects each year into more than 100 different languages for worldwide releases. And really, the focus becomes so important. And as the China-based company, and then followed Ali's IPOs, inspired hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs to follow the path. So scaling in China is all about speed, courage to break rules, and ambition to dominate the market. So for me, I think it's becoming more important, and that you all in or nothing kind of attitude to stay focused.
I want to see if anyone in the audience has a question for any of our panelists. Anyone? Susan, I'll go back to you. You have said that you are a lover of gravity and kite surfing and downhill mountain biking and all this stuff. And you've compared starting your business to climbing a mountain, and you just have to kind of find the right path, and you have to try out a couple different paths, but just try not to fall off the cliff. Tell us about a time when you almost fell off the cliff. Oh, wow. Well, other than the day that we had $4,500 in our bank account and payroll was due, I think, on Friday. And, we had payroll was a lot bigger than $4,500. But I think the biggest thing is that, I work in the space of ad tech, right, advertising technology. And they say in ad tech, you have to reinvent yourself every 18 months. And that's a really big challenge. Every 18 months, there's competitors that are sort of catching up to the great innovation that you came up with. Someone's algorithm gets better. So you're constantly sort of figuring out what works. And back in the day, we used to be able to keep our clients for 3 months, and now we've had some of them for 3 years. So I think we're slowly starting to navigate a better path up that mountain. But the other really big, I think, when you take a risk and know that, if you can figure out a way to get up there, then there's a lot of paths to success. There's not this one, like, this is how you must do it. And so I think that's been a really incredible part of the journey, is realizing, okay, there's a lot of different companies you can start. There's a lot of different ways you can be successful. And just keep trying to be honest with yourself and what's working and what's not working. And then don't be afraid to reinvent yourself if it's not working. Well, we're about to wrap up, but I want to ask each of my panelists a specific question, and I want you to each answer. We only have 15 seconds each, but what was the single biggest risk that you took in starting your business? Let's start with you, Debbie.
Ooh, the biggest risk. No, I think our biggest risk was probably our first launch, where we went up on Kickstarter, and we chose to try and raise $150,000 to go into production. I almost fainted when I hit that button, but I'm so glad that I did. We went big. We went for a big win, and we got it.
That's great. Susan?
It's interesting. I've started a couple of companies. I started a company in college, and for me, like, starting a company is not actually very risky. I know that's a weird statement, and I think it's because I've gotten really comfortable with risk, and I think I've done it by playing sports, so I encourage all young women to play sports. The more extreme, the better. But truly, I think, starting a company, if you think about the worst case scenario as failure, that was never really that scary. I can always go work at some big company and get a paycheck. And so I think just that comfort with not knowing, knowing it's okay is.
So for us,
seconds, biggest risk.
Yeah. So for us, it's probably choosing China as our headquarters office for global business. More than 10 years ago, sounds like a good idea. And of course, now we're leading the way from east to west. So that was a good choice.
Great. Excellent. We learned a lot of things. Think big, take risk, and don't even trust your mom. Thanks to my panelists, and a huge congratulations to them for making this most powerful women entrepreneurs. Thanks so much, you guys.